Loss comes in many forms, and usually in unexpected ways. It can be devastating, leaving you facing an uphill struggle to go on with life without someone you thought would always be there. But life does go on, and even in the deepest despair, we can find hope. Welcome to Grief Relief with your hosts, Drs. Gloria and Heidi Horsley, brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. And now here's Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi.
Welcome to Grief Relief. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my co-host and daughter,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we've really got an interesting show today because I think the personality types that come out in grief are so important, because it's you just get upset about different things, and and we think that we're all responding to grief in the same way. But as you know, when my son Scott and your brother died, we responded very differently, didn't we, to grief?
Absolutely. And like you said, it's going to be an important show, Mom, because it's difficult in families. I mean, when Scott died, we all grieved differently. And now we know, because of the Myers-Briggs, which we'll be talking about today, that it's because we all have different personality types.
Yeah. And could you mention a little bit about the Myers-Briggs, and then I'll introduce our guests?
Sure. The Myers-Briggs is actually an assessment tool that was developed, and I didn't know this until our guest told me. It was developed by a mother-daughter team. And it gives different personality types, like extrovert versus introvert, and we'll talk more about that. And it impacts the way that we grieve and the way that we live our lives.
And it was based on the work of Carl Jung originally, and if people, are into the psychological part. But really what's really going to be important for you today is to realize that your grief and the way you respond is unique to you, and family members may grieve differently. And so we're going to have Lisa Prosser-Dodds is going to be on our show, and she's an expert on grief and loss and has done some dissertation work. And so, very in-depth on this, so it's going to be excellent.
Yeah, Dr. Lisa.
Yeah, Dr. Lisa.
She's a grief psychologist.
And then we're going to have Jeff Neeson on, and Jeff is a composer. And these two are coming on together to talk a bit, too, about the Myers-Briggs and parent loss, and how you're affected by the loss of a parent, because we know that so many of you have lost parents, and your responses to it are important, and your other family member responses are important.
Absolutely. Okay.
So let's introduce Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here.
It's so great to have you on the show today. And before we get started and having you talk about the Myers-Briggs, I wanted to show a couple of pictures of your mom and dad.
Thank you.
Because, this show is really all about being from the heart. And we give the, kind of intellectual kind of things on it. But this is really about us, isn't it?
It is really about us. And I think that those of us who come into the grief work are typically first introduced because of significant personal loss.
Yeah.
And there was no more significant loss in my life until Christmas morning, 1999, when Evelyn, my mother, died.
Yeah. Could we see a picture? There she is of Evelyn.
There she is.
Christmas morning. That's
Christmas morning.
Christmas morning.
And, we've had to work in the last 12 years to find very positive traditions that can uphold the beauty of that day while it is also filled with some bittersweet sorrow over her passing.
And then you've also lost your dad. We've got a picture of your dad, I believe. We're going to be showing.
My dad, Norman.
And there's Norman.
A very, very big part of Norman was lost that day my mom died. But he didn't actually pass for 3 more years. But I lost both of them within 4 years of each other.
Wow, that's a lot. So basically you were orphaned to a certain extent.
I think that that's a very accurate phrase. I think that that is the feeling. No matter how old you are, when both of those parents are gone, it's as if you've been left without an anchor.
Well, I always say, and I haven't lost my parents. Obviously, my mother's right here, but it's got to be strange. You have your parents in your life your whole life.
Right.
You never know your world without them.
Right.
And then suddenly, both of them are gone.
Right.
And so you have to find your way differently. And I know for me, I also started finding those people in my life who could be parental, who I was only 40 years old. I wanted very much to still have people that could not fill their shoes, not be in place of, but I could still go to for that kind of parental advice and mentoring.
So Lisa, when you say that, that's partly due to your personality type, isn't it?
Exactly, Gloria. Exactly. Yes, because I'm very much a big picture and feeler-oriented person, and I needed those relationships, and I needed somebody who could tell me I was doing it right.
So give us a little taste of what the Myers-Briggs is like and how people would know why they grieve differently
Sure.
than other people. So
I think we have a slide that we can use just to show maybe there we go. There are really 4 parts to the Myers-Briggs, and there are 4 preferences. And the first one is about how we take in energy, how we gain energy. The second one is about how we acquire information. What kind of information comes to us that we retain? And then what do we do with that information? How do we make decisions? And then the last one is, how do we like our life approached? Now, we've talked about the two of you have a very different style in that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But really, it's that simple, just those 4 different aspects of our life. Then if we go to the next slide, we'll see that that energy spectrum that I talked about is where we get those words extroversion and introversion.
and we've heard those a lot. I mean,
Yes,
those
probably the
are
most-
common words.
the most
Now we can
common.
all kind of understand what they are.
Right.
Because Heidi and I were talking about I'm a little more of an extrovert, and you're maybe a little more introverted, but you're still.
I'm an extrovert, but I need some downtime.
And that's a beautiful point, Heidi, because we're very rarely one or the other. We generally have a preference. This is what I show the world the most. This is what I lead with. But to be a healthy whole person, you need the other side too. So all of us have extroverted moments and introverted moments. The question is, which one takes less energy? That's your preference. It's like handwriting. There are left-handed preference and right-handed preference. I'm left-handed. Now I can get by and I can do things with my right hand, but it takes more energy and I have to concentrate more.
So if I had a family member die, that would stress me, and I'd need energy, and I could even become more extroverted or more introverted.
That's right, and that's key in understanding grief type, that when we understand where our source of energy comes from and the things in our life that we are looking for comfort, that helps us understand, why am I so tired? Why am I just psychologically and mentally exhausted? Well, many times because grief is asking you to be out of type.
Wow. Interesting.
So if we go back to that slide, the other ones are information. And some people take in information through their senses. There are flowers here. I can touch them, I can see their colors. Others are more intuitive in taking in information. Oh, what a beautiful summer bouquet. I bet that if I got closer, that would smell beautiful. And so there's the intuitive big picture, and there's the sensor, or what we kind of talk about, practical ways of taking in information. Then what do you do with that information? Once you've taken in that information, how do you make decisions? And there's 2 choices. One is thinking, in which you make a decision based upon logic and reason, what makes sense, or relationships. How will the people in my life be affected by this decision? How will my values and morals be impacted? And so you have that dichotomy again. And if you have a thinker griever and a feeler griever, there can be a lot of conflict and a lot of dissent and disagreement in your family over, well, we need to do something that helps all the people around us versus we need to do what makes sense and what's logical.
Well, Heidi, we were talking about when Scott died many years ago. I wanted to have 2 funerals, one in where we lived and one in our hometown, which was thousands of miles away.
Right.
And there were a lot of other people who only wanted to have one, and you were saying that you were one of those people now.
Yes, I wanted to have the funeral where we grew up in upstate New York, but I didn't want to have the second funeral. I mean, in hindsight, the second funeral ended up being great, but at the time, I definitely just wanted the one funeral.
Yes. So you can really have some differences in opinion. I think, you can think somebody's being ornery or contrary or
difficult.
Yeah.
And I often say, and I'm sure you've heard this before, we grieve the same way that we live. I'm sure at Scott's passing, it wasn't the first time you and Heidi had any kind of a disagreement.
Right.
Or had seen things differently. No, because you had different personalities before Scott's passing.
Right.
But what we sometimes know is that when traumatic things happen, it's like a magnifier. to those personality differences. And it really then can become even bigger than it was before.
I think you kind of go on automatic.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost like, you know, you just have to do, like you said, you have to go with, you have so low energy, you have to go with any place you can find it.
And
Anything.
oftentimes we let other people just kind of push us to wherever it is we need to be, especially in those first few weeks.
Yeah, I'm thinking sometimes some of us want people to come into our lives to support us, and some of us want to be left alone,
And
to
that
kind
would
of grieve by ourselves.
definitely falls to the extroverted nature versus the introverted nature. You know, the extrovert is the one that's going to say, everybody, I need to tell everybody. I need everybody to come and I need to hear the story. Oh my gosh, I'm in an elevator. Can I please tell you what has just happened in my life? Versus the introvert who's going to say, I need to be with myself. I need solitude. I need to have some time to myself.
Maybe even I don't want to hear their name.
Absolutely.
And some people really want to. Well, you have the different types of grievers on a slide, right?
So what we did was we took all of these, about 270 people, and we had them take their Myers-Briggs, and then we had them take grief analysis and different ways of grieving. And we saw some significant differences within those two middle letters. And so I think, yes, there they are. There's the NT, which is the intuitive thinker, and those are the competent grievers. Those are the ones who want to get it right. They need to master the grief experience. They go online, they get books, self-help. They come to professionals, they go to groups. They want to do grieving right. Like I said, sometimes they even get their PhD in grief. The intuitive thinker. Then there's the intuitive feeler. And I think we kind of talked about you being the searching griever, the one who's searching for meaning making. What meaning can I find in this loss?
And I said that was so interesting because when Scott died, my favorite book was Man's Search for Meaning.
Absolutely.
And I read it and I kept rereading it and trying to make meaning out of his loss.
So that's very much influenced, not solely, but influenced by the fact that you're an intuitive feeler. Then we also have the practical griever, which is the sensor thinker, and the practical griever is the one that's probably the least emotional.
And this is my mother?
Oh no, I think it's your dad.
Oh, it is my dad, yes.
Yeah.
It is my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the practical griever.
Yeah, he's very, you know, what are the things that need to get done?
Yeah.
You know, what are the facts? What are the things? How do we logically and realistically get through this?
Right.
And so they're, like I said, the least emotionally outward with their grief style. And then the last one, if we can look at that one more time, would be what I think you are, Gloria. I think that you're the sensor feeler, and that's called the guardian of grief. And the guardians are those who want to guard or uplift the memory of the deceased. They're so concerned about the memory of the one they lost that they do amazing things, tangible things. It has to be real, it has to be tangible, and it has to work. And I said,
Starting a foundation.
Start a foundation, perhaps. Start an incredible foundation that is open to hope for everyone. And so out of Scott's memory comes this amazing, tangible thing. And so that's that guardian of their memory. We see fundraisers and races and all kinds of different tangible on the sides of the road. 30 years ago, we didn't see little memorials built for someone who's died upon. And that is a tangible guardian style of grief.
You know, what occurs to me when we talk about this now is how we all fit in together, because Heidi brings her piece and my husband brings his piece. I absolutely could not do the foundation without his helping me through this. And so we all bring it together. So we're going to end this segment right now, but I want to know, people can find your website, because I know you're doing a book, and they'll be able to go on your website and find out and follow you. And what is your website for them?
It's my whole name all smushed together, Lisa Prosser-Dodds.com.
Good. All right. And we've got it, you know, in the,
Thank you.
in the lower
I
third.
love this, Lisa, and I wish that we had it when Scott died, because I think I would have understood not only my own grief process, but that of my family members also.
And that, Heidi, is the #1 reason I've done this, is because we oftentimes make judgments on ourselves that I must not be doing it right.
Right.
Or why aren't you doing it right? And so the number one reason why I have invested my soul into GRIEFtype is so we all understand we are personal, we are different, we are unique, and our GRIEFtype is too.
Great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that because we're going to have Jeff Neeson come on right now. And I wanted to just say that we're going to go out of the show with his song, Life's Flight, and he's a pianist. And you're going to see a picture of Jeff and his dad kind of doing the same position, and his dad playing the piano and those kinds of things. But we want Jeff to come out now because we want to talk a little bit again about these Myers-Briggs personality types. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Great. It's so great to have you on the show. You want to switch over there, Lisa,
Sure.
and let him
Come on in,
sit
Jeff.
right there. Great. Well, Jeff, it's great to have you on the show, and I appreciate your coming on. And what's this Myers-Briggs meant to you? Have you talked to Lisa about it? And
a small amount throughout the years that I've known her. It's been a great insight into who I am, why I am, and in some ways a freeing way to look at myself. And it's a permission to be who I am, because there's a reason. There's a code in there, and lets me be a little more comfortable in my own skin.
that's great. Well, you know, losing a parent, it's one of the major things that people visit us on our website for, surprisingly enough. And it's not children looking, it's adults. And could you talk a little bit about your personality type? Do you know what it is in dealing with your dad's death? And did you see any of your other family members trying to get you to do things that you didn't want to do, or, you know?
Definitely. I'm an ISFP, an introvert, sensor feeler.
Perceiver.
Good, Wendy.
ISFP.
I mean,
Nice.
Lisa, I just called you Wendy because we have a friend named Wendy.
We thought that might happen.
Anyway, so yeah, let's kind of dialogue with it together. Yeah.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of different processes, healing processes, grieving going on around the time that my dad passed away. I have one specific memory of an interaction between myself and my brother where we were like two introverted, tired dogs that weren't meshing well anymore. And he was tired of me not grieving the way that he was grieving, thinking that I should be grieving the way that he was, and him blowing up at me and me returning the favor, blowing up just as big, and it was like, why are we doing this? We didn't understand it at the time. We didn't have the tools to understand that, well, he's going through this differently than I am. I need to be inside myself and thinking about this process and dealing with it, and in some ways looking like I'm sulking. When my brother, still an introvert, wants to talk about it a little bit more and kind of map things out.
I love that you're saying this because I have so many people that we meet over time who will say, my spouse isn't grieving right, or my family member's not grieving right. He's just
or
not
maybe
doing
my spouse isn't grieving at all.
Yeah.
Because they're not outwardly showing their emotions.
Yeah.
Right.
Or they'll say, my spouse or family member is crying too much and they're too emotional and they need emotional help. You know, they're just not, they're way over the top with
I
this.
hear often, why aren't they over it yet? You know, it's been a year, it's been 5 years. Well, and I typically say, are you going to love that person forever? Yes. Then in some shape and fashion, you're going to grieve them forever. It's not always going to look the same, it's not always going to feel the same. But my experience says it's never over. Every Christmas morning, there is a grief part of that for me because that's the day my mom died. So it's never over. And so I think that I see judgment of folks saying, come on, let's hurry up, the Western world, let's hurry, let's get this over with, let's move on.
So how did you find out what personality type you were? Did you take a test? At least
I did. Yes.
Lisa helped you. And is there a test that people can take? I know Heidi and I went online and took a little test.
Yes,
that was
there is.
pretty-
There are two, actually. The Myers-Briggs online, but that generally costs some money. There's another one called Kiersey Temperament, and that one is generally free and gives you the same 4 letters. And there are a lot of others out there, so you need to be careful, but to try and find something that is Myers-Briggs authorized, because those are the ones that have the real good questions that will help you. Another way, don't even take the test. Just read all of the examples and find yourself within the theory.
Yeah.
But Jeff had me, so he got to take the test. Actually, I think you were at a week-long seminar with me.
That's right.
And so we got to really delve into that. And that was prior to your dad dying.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to imagine. It's been that long.
Can you talk a little bit about the music?
The music, my dad was such an influence on me and music in my life. It was important to him, therefore it should be important to me. I took 7 years of piano lessons that he forced me to take, and it was one of the most grueling 7 years, of my life that I was so happy to be over with.
I want to ask you something. Do you think he was trying to bring you out a little bit with the music too? You were talking about being a little introverted.
I think I had so much in common with my dad from looks and personality that he assumed that, well, he's so much like me, he must be interested in this as well. So the music, the song Life's Flight came about 5 years later, after my dad passed away, when I had a piano in the house again. And that was always a way for me to go and kind of be with my dad, remember him and tinker on the piano, because I still remembered just enough to kind of fool around and toy with music. And
It's a pretty beautiful song for somebody who
I
was
was gonna say-
toying around.
I was going to say, wait a minute, I've heard the song, so you obviously got much better from toying around to the time that you wrote that played that song, right?
It's an interesting gift, I suppose. I don't read or play music very well, but I can sit there and create.
Wow, it was beautiful. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yes.
It really is. Yeah.
And when I bring that back to Jeff's personality type, he's a sensor feeler. So those practical, tangible, hitting notes on a piano are very natural for his type, for his
That's
personality
interesting.
type. And the introverted nature, you don't have to play the piano with a bunch of people in the room.
Right,
You can
and
do that
and
alone.
he can express himself. I love how you said it brought you closer to your dad.
Yeah.
Because that was something you did together and that he was good at, is playing the piano.
Yes. Yeah. He was very proud of anything that I did musically, and so it was definitely the perfect way to remember him.
And did it help you heal also?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, and
Eventually,
it's a process.
the song evolved slowly, and I stumbled onto it really, playing some other song that I barely knew, and as it started to evolve, I started to associate more and more the memory of my dad, and eventually the song was complete, and I would often go down to my piano and play, and it was a way for me to remember my dad, but be sad about it. And it took me about 10 years before I finally went down one day to play the song, and it clicked with me that I didn't have to be sad about it. That there are so many people in this world that have lost their parents far earlier in their lives than I did. That I had a good 22, 23 years with my dad, and that this song needed to be something that I could find joy in and remember those happy memories that I had with my dad.
And so you transformed your grief.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lisa, I want to ask you, is there a difference between men and women on the Myers-Briggs and grief?
Actually, we don't see a statistical difference between men and women generally in the Myers-Briggs, but we know that there are grief differences between men and women, and so that leads me to Myers-Briggs is just one part of why we grieve the way we do. Gender, culture, family of origin. There are many different influences in why the relationship with the person who died. So many different things. So Myers-Briggs is just part of that. And then that question, gender, absolutely, it's another part.
Well, great. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching our show today. I think it's really been enlightening, haven't you? Don't you, Heidi?
Absolutely. It's such interesting information.
Yeah, it is. And I want to thank you both for being on the show. It's great. And, you know, I particularly want to thank you for being on the show because we were talking about the fact that you were doing the Myers-Briggs and you have the more introverted personality. And to come out and be on and everything, it's really awesome. And thank you for being on, and good luck. What are your plans for the future? I know you have a book.
Well, yes, I'm working right now on the nailing down that contract and that book, and then I'm opening a small private practice in Santa Cruz, and looking to do training across the country so that more and more people can understand how GRIEFtype really does impact grief.
I love that. And people can get a hold of you
through the website.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, and people can go online and look up their personality types now and think about these issues. And thank you again so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah. Well, Heidi, I think it's a great time for anybody in our audience to go online and find out their personality type. And you know, not that you have to study it and totally understand it, but in fact, if you don't even look it up, the idea that people are grieving differently than you are, maybe by personality type, and maybe they're not just being ornery and contrary and angry, right?
Exactly. And these tests are easy to take, and they don't take long.
Good. All right. Well, thanks again for listening to the show, and we're going to go out of the show with the wonderful song Life's Flight with Jeff Neeson, and we're going to show some pictures of he and his dad. And I particularly want you to look at the ones his dad's at the piano and the two guys looking alike. They're very, very charming. And thanks again for watching.